Hey everybody, this is a project I've had on the back burner for a few months. I shot some photos and a little bit of video, and I thought I'm going to explain the story of how I used my Wrangler to save my marine aquarium. And I have two aquariums in the house. The other one's freshwater. It doesn't have a big problem if it loses power for a while. But the marine aquarium is critical that the lighting, the temperature, the water flow all be correct in there, or the livestock really suffers and oftentimes can die. In the process of going through this, I think there were a few lessons learned and maybe some hints on equipment configuration that you might want in your rigs. So I thought I'll go ahead and create a video. If you're interested in the electrical system in my Jeep, I talk a little bit about that. If you're interested in how to do a little bit of troubleshooting, I touch on that briefly. It's really not a how-to video. But if you've got any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. I'll be delighted to try and answer any that you might have. Anyway, on to the video. The year 2020, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, was also filled with wintry weather in the Oklahoma City metro. Several storms over several months would bring both heavy precipitation in the form of ice and snow, as well as bitterly cold weather. The most damaging of these storms was not the newsworthy blast of cold that made front-page news across the nation. Rather, it was a wave of 3 ice storms over 2 days in October. This early in the cold weather season, most trees were still leaf-on. That gave a greater surface area for ice to accumulate, which then weighed down the limbs, breaking them and felling many trees. Power lines all over the metro were severely damaged, both by falling tree material and direct damage from the ice on the distribution grid. I heard there were over 9,000 individual repairs that had to be made to restore power to over 250,000 households. It would take 8 days for my home to have power restored. During those 8 days, I'd have to keep my marine aquarium powered on, lest I lose hundreds of dollars in livestock. I used a power inverter in my Wrangler to keep the aquarium operating. Unlike in my Gladiator, I could keep it operating without leaving the Jeep on at all times, and it ran off the aux battery in my dual battery system. This wasn't without problems. I would still have to run the Wrangler a couple times a day to recharge the battery, and that's when the battery isolator stopped working. So I had to create a workaround for that. I did that by wiring the 2 batteries together, bypassing the isolator. This would work okay since I wasn't using the start battery much, so it should always be fully charged. I used this workaround for 4 days until a gas-powered generator I ordered came in, and I could use that to power both aquariums, though the freshwater tank is more tolerant of power loss, and my refrigerator, from which I did lose most of its contents. After the storm had passed, I assessed how the system had worked and made several repairs. The first was to troubleshoot the isolator. I connected a voltmeter to the start battery, on the right, and measured its voltage. Next, I connected up to the aux battery and measured its output voltage. That's when I noticed that the isolator was not connecting the 2 batteries with a manual override. So I added a jumper wire across the boost switch, used to self-jump start, and the isolator indicated it was connected with the red boost light. My boost switch was bad. The battery voltage still read low, which suggested that the isolator was bad. This was similar to the same issue I had a few years ago with the engine fan off relay contacts building up excess carbon that led to electrical resistance. This is caused by sparking as the contacts vibrate while powered and driving over washboard roads. So I had 2 repairs. Replaced the boost switch and the battery isolator. I ordered the parts and a few days later began the repairs. The first task was to disconnect the batteries and isolate the wiring so there wouldn't be any accidental shorting. I didn't want to start any fires. Next, I removed the bad isolator. I took it into my shop next to the new isolator. Using similar wiring and electrical terminals, I made the replacement isolator wiring look like the old one. I then installed it into the Wrangler. I then checked that the isolator was working properly with 2 voltmeters. The first was reading on Torque Pro running on my Android tablet, a Nexus 7 in October, but since replaced by a Samsung 8-inch Tab A. With the engine off, it indicated a good start battery voltage in the 12-volt range, and with the engine running, it immediately indicated alternator charging voltage of 14.3 volts. The second meter is built into my ham radio, which is connected directly to the aux battery. When the isolator is not connected, it will show the aux battery voltage, 12.8 volts or less depending on the charge level. However, once the isolator connects, usually several minutes after engine start, it will show the alternator voltage in the 14-volt range. These readings checked good. The next problem was the boost switch not working. Got a new switch for the dual battery isolator boost switch, and this is it right here. I'm going to install that. Shouldn't take but 10 minutes, right? So what I'll do, I got a little jumper cable here, and I'll show you what it's supposed to. If this switch was working correctly, then when that switch is pressed, you heard the click, and you see that the red light came on. So it'll stay like that for a minute or two, connecting both batteries together. What I'm going to do is let that time out. I'm going to pull this old switch out, which isn't working, and I'm going to replace it. Okay, it's been about a minute, and it timed out. And again, when I push this, it's not connecting up like I did when I did the jumper. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. See it? It's intermittent. You can see it did connect that time. And it'll stay connected even when I pull this off. Of course, we've got 12 volts here. That's run to the battery, so we want to be careful that we don't touch that to ground inadvertently. That wouldn't be good. Now, my new switch didn't come with a lock washer. This one has one. So I'm going to go ahead and an airplane landing overhead. In case you don't know it, I live right next to Tinker Air Force Base, and I'm on the I think this is the base leg of the primary runway there. So that sounded like a fighter overhead. We get a lot of AWACS, B-52s, B-1s, even the occasional B-2. AWACS are assigned here, and the bombers and tankers go through depot here. There we go. Ops check. Perfect. No having a monkey with it, loosen it up, play with it, and get it and everything else in order to get it to work. That's it. Okay, critters of the sea. Time for me to feed you. You guys hungry? You're always hungry, aren't you? All right, everybody. Here we go. Where you at, little shrimp? There you are. You're in a good spot.